Welcome back to Help My Business is Growing, a podcast where we explore how to grow and build a business that is healthy and sustainable. I'm your host, Kathy Svetina. This episode, episode 11, is a part of trilogy on productivity. Episodes 10 to 12 are all about productivity, but look at it from different angles and from different perspectives. In previous episode 10, my guest was Dawn O'Connor, and we explored how being productive and working are actually two different things. Dawn also gave us specific tools that you can implement in your work that will actually make you productive, not just busy. So in this episode, episode 11, we're going to look more into this busyness in the context of being reactive and stuck in the doing. Because I'm sure that you know that feeling that even though you're working, but it constantly feels like you're behind, it's a terrible place to be, and it's a sure way to experience burnout. We're going to be talking about how to avoid that place altogether and how to cultivate a culture in your business that focuses on not just getting the stuff done, but also getting the right stuff done and getting away from this reactive work that can oftentimes feel addictive as well. In episode 12, the next episode, which is going to be the last one in this trilogy, we will dive into the topic of how to do more by actually doing less. And I'm sure you heard about this concept before, and it's very easy to say, but extremely hard to do, especially when you have a growing business. All three of these episodes are filled with actionable advice from three different experts in their field. And they're all designed in a way that you can start immediately implementing their advice to get you closer to a place in your business that you want to be at. So before we go into this second episode of the trilogy, I want to tell you a little bit more about my guest, Julie Hyde. Julie Hyde is the queen bee of anti-busy. She's a leadership guru who believes that busyness is a code for burnout. She's creating a buzz wherever she speaks, and Julie enthralls audiences with her frank assessment of busy and how it is crippling your business. She has more than 2 decades experience in business leadership and coaching and knows how to take the sting out of the poor performance. She has climbed the corporate ladder, managed large teams of people, and led a business turning a $22 million profit. Today, Julie is a leadership consultant and makes it her business to know her client's business, inside out. Julie believes that business success is rooted in powerful, influential leaderships, and that you can only be a truly effective and relevant leader if you take the ownership of your busyness, unshackle yourself from its constraints, and give yourself permission to prosper. She's an author and highly sought-after speaker, and she empowers audiences with practical, game-changing success strategies that challenge what you thought you knew about leadership. Join us. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm so excited for our chat today.
I'm so excited too. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, I think there's no other time that it's been more relevant to talk about busyness and burnout than now. And we're recording this in September of 2021. And I think it's safe to say that in the last year and a half, most of us have felt that effect of being busy and how it can bring out burnout if we're not careful. So you wrote the entire book about being busy and the effects that it has on people and in businesses. And I do want to ask you, what does being busy really mean? And is there such a thing as good busy and bad busy?
Yeah, it's a really good question because busy means different things to different people. And some people think busy is great, and then other people have the perception that busy is not good. So when I'm talking in the context of busy in general, it's you bad busy. So that is just being completely reactive and stuck in the doing. It's just getting caught in that vortex of constantly having to be busy and constantly having to do. And there's a lot of research now around how, busy has become a real addiction, particularly in the Western world. You ask someone how they are and they will respond with busy. And then it's the different levels of busy. They're so busy. They're crazy busy. Like they're frantically busy. There's a whole lot of drama around it. When I run workshops, I always ask people to tell me, what is your definition of busy and what does that mean to you? And 85% so far have the negative connotation of busy, and that, it's frantic, it's overwhelming, it's people being really disorganized, they're not in line with their priorities. There's a whole lot of differences around it. And when you look up the definition of busy, it means that you have a lot to do. And it's a bit of a so what factor. We've all got a lot to do because the world is busy now. In the last 18 months, we have faced the most enormous disruption. Our whole world has been turned on its head. How we work, how we live has fundamentally changed and is changed forever. And there's a lot of busyness that goes on in the doing, but there's a lot of busyness that goes on in our brain as well. And that's where the fatigue and the burnout can really come into play. And particularly when you're trying to navigate through a pandemic, there's so much more complexity to work through and to consider, and so many contingencies that you have to have in place. In Australia right now, I'm in lockdown again, lockdown 6, and it's even thinking about, can I go on a holiday? Can I plan for that? Your brain's just always working. So the whole busyness factor and what it means can mean very different things to different people. But the key thing we really have to understand is, what are we busy doing? And is that in line with our priorities? Is that in line with our health goals? And is that in line with where we're wanting to head, what we're wanting to achieve, and the person that we want to be?
Yeah, that's a good point. And you mentioned there's this addictive quality to being busy. And why do you think that being busy is so addictive? And I've noticed this with myself, is when you're in such high alert constantly, it's really hard to wind down. It's because it almost feels like your body has forgotten how to relax and how to be in that state of not being busy.
Yeah, 100%. There's a whole lot of adrenal fatigue that goes on with that busyness. My belief is that busy is a mindset and that busy is a habit, and it is an addictive habit that we have gotten into. It's like we just don't know what to do if we haven't got all of our time filled up. We've got into this habit of, running around with work, back-to-back meetings, getting absorbed in emails constantly, having to, meet with our teams or meet with our clients and be available 24/7 with the introduction, 10 years or so with our smartphones. Like, we're always wired. We're always really connected. And then, with our families, it's getting the kids around to sporting events, parties. Where has downtime for kids gone? Where's that space for them to just sit and play and think and imagine? So there's an Australian psychologist, Leanne Faraday-Brash, and she's done a lot of study and has come to the conclusion that busy is addictive because we get such a sense of significance out of being busy, and we can often attach our success to busyness rather than attaching our success to the outcomes that we are achieving by being this busy. And one thing I really encourage people to think about is to step back from that busyness and think about, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as someone who's simply busy? Or do you want to be known for the person who is making a difference, who's changing lives, who's making their clients' lives easier, who's being a fantastic role model for their children, who's being, a great friend, partner, sister, mother, whatever that looks like? It's like, what do you want to be known for? Because I can tell you right now, Kathy, when my time is up, one thing I do not want on my tombstone is that Julie Hyde was busy, because I want to be known so much more than that. And this is where we're heading, because all that people, the word that people use to explain how they are and what they're doing is busy. And it's very beige, it's very boring. but it's become that lazy language that people have got into just to go, yep, you know what, I'm just busy.
Yeah, and I've seen this especially in entrepreneurs as well. You're busy, you're constantly on this busy wheel, as I like to call it, and it's really hard to get off of it. In the company that you're trying to lead, the employees that you're trying to lead suffer as well. What are some of the effects of this busyness? How does that affect the business, especially a growing business, when there's this culture of let's be constantly busy? How does that affect it?
Yeah. So if you're talking about, so you mentioned entrepreneurs, there's a lot of talk around the entrepreneurial world, particularly where with startups and with growing businesses, that you've got like the hustle, you've got to be on and you've got to be doing these enormous hours. Yes. And, you know, that really annoys me because that's not working smart. That's working harder. That's not necessarily being strategic. So what I see with entrepreneurs is that burnout that you mentioned before. It's like being constantly busy and constantly on and just doing and doing and doing. It's not sustainable. So if you think about, you know, an athlete, a high performance athlete, they don't train all day. They fuel their bodies. They stop, they rest, they make sure that they're drinking lots of water, like they train, they reflect. What did I do well? What do I need to improve on? What do we need to do tomorrow to make sure that I'm incrementally improving? And yet, you know, when entrepreneurs or, you know, business leaders are just stuck in that busyness, their head down, their rear end up, and they're just doing. So on that hamster wheel. But the impact of that is the perception that it can create with those around you. So if you're constantly talking busyness with clients, they can actually lose confidence in you. It's like, are you too busy to look after them the way they want to be looked after? Are you too busy for me to refer to you, as an example? So it can really impact growth in that way. We all want referrals because half the work is done with that when someone refers a client into you, right? They've hopefully spoken really well about you. We want that business. When you've got a team of people and they get stuck in that busy cycle, that can really contribute to low productivity levels. Even though people might be working ridiculous hours and sitting at their desk for long periods of time, that does not mean that they're productive. And it also doesn't mean that you're productive when you're doing that, because busyness does not equal productive. Productivity means doing the right things effectively and efficiently. And when we get stuck in that busyness, we can very much move away from that and not be doing the right things. We can really get caught in doing comfort zone activities rather than the strategic activities that we need to be doing. It can also just create that culture of the hamster wheel where people are just going and going and going and going and not necessarily improving. So conversations with the team seem to be let go because the leaders are too busy to sit down and have coaching conversations with their team. So the team can often feel like they're not valued, like they're just here with nose to the grind and there's no thanks. It's just that, you know, the organization wants more, which can lead to disengagement levels. And I think, you know, we're all very well aware globally we are facing some really high disengagement levels, which is leading to very high resignation levels within businesses right now. And that's something that, you know, we're all struggling with in terms of that retention of employees, but also attracting employees to your business, which then leads me to culture. Because if you've got a busy culture, that's not attractive, right? Yeah. It's like, I don't want to just come into an organization and simply be busy. What's the purpose? What are the values? How am I contributing? And how are we going to work together as an inclusive team? So a busy culture, in my opinion, isn't going to work as we're moving into this new era where people are different. How we need to lead is different. How we need to lead our businesses is very different. Our clients are different, right? People out of this whole experience that we had in 2020 have reprioritized what's important to them. Like they're getting smarter now, and they're not necessarily just going to put up with being made to have their nose to the grind for an incredible long period of time.
And I think what has changed also is because remote workers now, they're working from home. So that cue of someone being at the office and heads down and working and looking busy has changed as well. So what I think what is replaced is this constant meetings and Zoom meetings that are just not productive. And wouldn't that be another format of just busy work that doesn't really get you to that particular goal that you want to go, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The research shows that our brains fatigue in between 30 and 40 minutes, particularly when we're on a Zoom meeting. I think everyone will resonate with the fact that when you're on a Zoom, it takes a much different energy level to keep the engagement and the conversation going. So yeah, the back-to-back Zoom meetings or even back-to-back meetings, by the time you get to the third or fourth one, you're thinking, oh my God, what happened in that first one and what am I meant to be doing out of that? So while you think you are being productive, again, it's like, are you enabling yourself to be alert, to be on and to do your best work and have the right conversations in these meetings? And are these meetings necessary? There's a whole lot of need to prove, which can often be a reflection of the organization. Employees can feel like they have to prove they're working when they're at home. And it's that I've got to be on, I've got to be working late. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're working smarter.
Exactly. So if you're trying to cultivate this culture of non-busyness and actually having employees that are doing effective work, it doesn't matter how long they're working, but just that they are effective at their jobs and that they're getting stuff done, the right stuff done. I think that's important, not just stuff done, the right stuff done. How do you go about cultivating that? What are some of the steps that you should be taking in your organization, especially as you're growing your business? And there's so many things that you should be doing. And, we're all, I know you hate that word busy, but that you're the right kind of busy. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah. And you're right. And as I say, I'm not necessarily encouraging people not to be busy. It's the type of busy that we are, because in business, of course, my God, if you're not, you've got a different problem. But again, if you're busy doing just stuff that doesn't make a difference, that's not going to contribute to your growth. So the first thing that I really encourage people to do in the first instance when you're wanting to cultivate a culture of high performance, of productivity, is you've really got to stop, which sounds counterintuitive, but you've got to stop and reflect. What are we doing right now that is working and that is contributing to the growth of our business, to the culture that we're wanting to create, and to, our client satisfaction, for example, like the key metrics in your business. And what are you doing that's working, that is contributing to enabling people to shine and do their best work? This is critical. Everyone works really differently. And they're reflecting on, what are we doing that's not working? What are we just wasting our time on? Where do we need to pivot? That amazing word that's overused. What do we need to, what do we need to stop doing? What do we need to start doing? What do we need to change? And what do we need to continue? That's one of my most favorite business models. A really, really simple framework to work through to understand what's working, what's not, and then what we need to change and implement. So they're the first things. And then it's understanding, what are the priorities? What are the top 3 priorities right now for our organization or for the team or even for you personally, that if you were to do them was going to, create that real sense of achievement for you, like massive ticks. And if you did focus work and achieve them, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're growing? Does that mean that you're acquiring the clients that you want into your business? Does it mean that you're attracting employees to your business? Does that mean that you're cultivating that culture of well-being within the business and you're looking after the team of people, because once you do have a team of people in your business, they are the power in your business and they need to be a top priority. So it's really enjoying that you understand those top 3 priorities, say, in the organization, and then making sure that your activities are in complete alignment with that. They're probably my top 3 things to be doing.
It almost seems like taking an inventory of what's working, what's not working, and what your goal is. What is those top 3 things that are going to get you to that goal? And I think that's so important, is to take that time and do that. And I advocate for that in finances as well, is because taking that time to do the financial planning, the strategic planning, to take that busyness out of the business and really focus on what's going to get you the result. And I love that, because you can marry the way how you work with the way how you run the business, the way how you run the finances. And I absolutely love this model that you just modeled for us.
Yeah, and it's really powerful. And this is the thing that people often feel like they don't have time for, in terms of stopping and thinking, because, of course, that's not doing. Right. So there's this real aversion to it. I get a lot of pushback when I suggest to people, take time out. I do it daily. At the end of every day, I take time out. And that's my habit in terms of reflecting on, what did I do well today? What didn't go so well? What do I need to do differently tomorrow to make sure, that I'm back in alignment? Because if life happens, our best laid plans can be blown up. But that's not every day. If you can achieve your plan 75% of the time, you're on a winner. But it's committing to these new habits, and taking that time out is the most powerful thing that we can be doing in a busy time, and enabling our brain to stop and think and reflect on what's going on, to enable it to make sense of what's going on, and, then can create meaning around what's going on. And then that meaning becomes like a learning, and you can make decisions from that. So it's enabling yourself to make some really educated decisions in your business, but you can't necessarily do that unless you allow yourself dedicated time, I talk about the balcony and the dance floor. So to elevate your thinking, to get up on that balcony and enable yourself to map out what's going on, rather than just being on that dance floor, busting out your moves and and it's loud and it's noisy.
I love that analogy of the balcony and the dance floor. Even though the dance floor might seem fun, however, you still want to be on the balcony.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know anyone who can stay on that dance floor for days and days and days and not want to get off and have a little rest.
This reminds me of the urgent important matrix. What's important is not urgent, and what's urgent usually is not important. And really understanding where it goes into that particular quadrant. How does that look like on a daily basis? If you commit to this, I do not want to be busy. I want to be good type of busy, and cultivate the space where I can be most of the time on the balcony and not on the dance floor. Yeah. How do you do that on a daily basis? Are there some practices that you can put into how you work, how you interact with the team? What would you suggest?
I think it's really important, and I know that you work with a lot of women, because this can be something that is attributed to women in the majority, in that we feel that we can do it all and we must do it all. And of course we can do it all, but we can't do it all at the same time, right? We can't do it all at once. Yeah. So I always go back to, what are your top priorities every day? And I say the mind loves to work in 3. So what are the top 3 things that you want to achieve today, right? And that, what are the glass balls that if you dropped, that would not be a good thing for your business? So these are the priorities. These are not necessarily your urgents, but their importance. And then from understanding that, it's then allowing yourself the time to do it. So when do you work best? So I know for myself, my best working time is in the morning. right? And I can sprint in the morning, say up to 1:00. So I get all my focus work done in the morning. Some people are afternoon people and they might work better then. So it's understanding what are the top 3 things that I need to get done? When am I going to do that? And am I going to commit to that, or is this simply going to be a little wish list? And that's the difference. So we can have the best laid plans. You can have the longest to-do list. That means nothing. We've got to commit to doing it. And then also something that James Clear explains really well in his book, Atomic Habits, it's creating a new identity for yourself. So it's not being Kathy, the busy entrepreneur, the busy business owner. It is Kathy, the person who educates and inspires women to take control of their finances and enables them to grow. Right? That sounds so much better than busy, right? So what is your identity? What is the new identity that you are going to attach to enable you to create new habits? Because if you think busy, you're going to be busy. You've got to think strategically. We've got to think differently. So I like to, for example, I like to think of myself as a strategic business owner. So it's that balance of I'll have some time for strategy during the day and I'll have time doing. Like I've got to get stuff done. And I am that doer. So, but it's understanding how I work best and also enabling myself to do that. And, you know, a whole other conversation around this is sleep. And, you know, and how we fuel ourselves to be our best through nutrition and sleep and exercise and all that sort of thing. So I hope I explained that in some sort of concise format.
You definitely did. And since you brought up a point of sleep, how does sleep and nutrition and just the whole well-being, how does that feed into the busyness?
These are the things that are compromised. People are apparently too busy to sleep. So sleep is really compromised and we can get into really bad sleep habits, which means if we're not getting enough sleep, we wake up tired, right? So then we're reverting to coffee and, you know, caffeine to get ourselves through the day. And caffeine has a huge impact on our sleep quality. Exercise, we've got to get out there and we've got to move our bodies. It doesn't mean you need to go to the gym or go out for a walk for an hour. Get out there for 20 minutes, you know, fresh air. It helps the endorphins, you know, the good feeling hormones that also enable us to be so much more productive. It's taking those microbreaks, right, to enable us to do that. And eating is something that, you know, good nutrition, which does take time. You know, I always do say that it does take a lot of time to eat well or planning to eat well, but you can do it. And when we're busy, we can revert to, well, skipping meals. There's a lot of study around that. I think, you know, there was a study done where 75% of people didn't break for lunch. So they might have eaten at their desk or they might have skipped lunch completely. Now, how are you going to get through the day when you're not fueling your body? And, you know, people will revert to takeaway because they're tired, they're fatigued, they don't have time to cook. So it's the meals that are full of the calories, the oils, the sodiums that aren't good for your body. So that doesn't sort of fuel you to enable you to feel motivated either, or to feel inspired to get out there and go for a walk. Like we can get that lazy sort of sluggish feeling. So yeah, the sleep, the exercise and the nutrition, and also the time to catch up with friends, like to get that connection with others can also be compromised. And relationships can really suffer through our busyness. And that can even be within our own households, like, you know, with our partners, with our kids. Yep. Relationships can really suffer at the hands of busy.
And the thing, it really is like a wheel, because you're busy, you do not have time to sleep, you don't have time to eat properly, then you're tired, and because you're tired, you're behind work, and then you're busy again. It's a merry-go-round, and it's really
Yeah.
hard to get off of it.
Yeah, it really is. It's a cycle. And unfortunately, that all contributes to burnout and exhaustion. And it's really unfortunate that most people have to get to that stage of absolute complete burnout where they just can't get out of bed, like they're really sick, or they experience some sort of a health issue like a heart attack, or stroke, or some sort of even like understanding that you have got cancer. Why does it have to get to that for people to make change? Because generally people will make change at that point. We've got to get better at reading the signs. And that also comes back to taking time out to listen to our bodies. Like generally your body's going to be trying to tell you something when things aren't right, that it needs a rest. Your brain, when you have that brain fog, it needs time out. It needs downtime. So we've got to give ourselves the space, the silence to be able to tune in and understand what's going on with our bodies. I mean, these are our temples. We've got to look after ourselves, because if we don't look after ourselves, no one else is going to do it for us.
That's so true. That's really true. And you talked before. You talked a little bit about these micro breaks. Can we talk more about that?
Yeah, so that's really powerful now, particularly when we're online so much. There's so much power in just taking little micro breaks. And, lots of psychologists have recommended that, every 20 minutes, you take a break away from the screen, that you blink 20 times, that you look 20 meters, you breathe deeply 20 times. But, even every hour on the hour, just taking a break, getting up, walking around, and breathing deeply 10 times, just giving yourself that space. Now, that's not going to take a long time, but it's just moving around, getting some movement happening rather than sitting there and staring. So there's a lot of research around the micro breaks now that enables you to do much more productive work. Because when we're fatiguing, when we're tired, that really impacts on our productivity. When we have distractions around us and, for example, when the phone pings, rings or dings, whatever's going on, that impacts our productivity. And it can take something like 27 minutes or something like that to refocus back on the task that you were doing. So, to get into that deep work again. So the micro breaks are really powerful. And as I say, you don't have to exercise for an hour a day. It's like, just go for a 5-minute little walk. Just get out there, get air. And it can refresh you and enable you to then refocus on the task, concentrate, get up, and have another break.
Yeah, and just before we started recording this, we both came from a little walk. So that was... It works. It works.
It does. So we're walking our talk.
So Julie, this has been absolutely delightful. And I always ask this question at the end of all my interviews. What is the next step that for someone who really wants to implement that in their life and in their business, not being that much busy and actually getting away from busyness and doing things that really matter to them and it's going to take them further? You gave us a lot of tips already, but if someone's not completely ready to go that far yet, what is the one little small thing that they can do in the next week to take them closer to not being busy?
I think if they start thinking about that question, what do you want to be known for? It's a really powerful question. And it's something that a lot of people don't ask themselves. But it's like, what do you want to be known for? What are the 3 things that you would like people to say about you when you're not in the room? So whether that's your clients, whether that's your family, whether that's your team, what do you want people to say about you? And then it's thinking about, okay, so what do I need to do to behave in a way that's in alignment with that? And that's going to get people thinking about their behaviors and what they're doing. So that's just a nice sort of way to think about who they are, effectively what their brand is. Because if we move away from that busy to being something a whole lot more meaningful, that's, I think, is going to inspire people to take that next step and think about, okay, what do I need to change? What boundaries do I need to put in place to enable myself to achieve this?
I love it. That's a small step that anyone can do in the next week or so, and it's going to get you really closer to not being busy and having the business and the life that's really going to support you where you want to be.
Yeah.
So, Julie, when can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yes, well, my website's a fountain of resources. So that's www.juliehyde.com.au, or on LinkedIn. I share a lot of information on LinkedIn every day.
Thank you so much for being in the show, Julie. This was super, super helpful. Delightful to have you on.
Yes, thanks, Kathy. I've loved it. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode with Julie and that she gave you tools on how to avoid busyness and the burnout that it creates. This episode comes with timestamps to topics that we discussed, and it has its own blog post as well. You can find all of these timestamps, the links to the blog, and the link to Julie's website, along with her book, Busy, in the show notes of this episode. As a reminder, this episode is a part of the trilogy, so make sure to tune in to the next one, episode 12, where we're going to be discussing how to do more by actually doing less. And one last thing before I go. I do have a favor to ask. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcast, if you could please go to the show and tap the number of stars that you think the show deserves. It really helps other people find it, and it helps other entrepreneurs as well. Thanks so much. Until next time.